The parade ground shimmered under the morning sun, a sea of uniforms and discipline. 300 cadets stood in perfect formation, boots gleaming, chins high, rifles aligned like a single heartbeat. And then, just as the band struck its opening note, everything stopped, because the old mail clerk, the one who usually delivered letters and coffee, had just taken the General S seat. Every officer froze. Every cadet stared. "Who authorized this?" the parade commander barked, his voice slicing through the silence. But the old man didn't flinch. He simply adjusted his cap, straightened his back, and said in a calm, commanding tone no one had ever heard from him before, "I did. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you'd be watching from. I love knowing who is listening." The murmurs rippled through the ranks like wind through dry grass. The mail clerk, Mr. Harris, had worked at the academy for 10 years. Quiet, gentle, always smiling as he handed out letters from home, small lifelines for young cadets fighting loneliness. No one ever questioned him. No one ever noticed him. Until today. Colonel Brandt stormed forward, his medals flashing in the sun. "You're out of line, Clerk. Get up from that chair before I—" "Before you what?" Harris interrupted, voice sharp as steel. "Before you disrespect the very code you swore to uphold?" The air stilled. Something in his tone wasn't insolence. It was authority. Old, earned, and absolute. The colonel hesitated, studying the man before him. The crowd sensed it too. There was something about the way Harris held himself, the squared shoulders, the steady eyes, that didn't belong to a clerk. It belonged to someone who'd commanded men, and survived to tell about it. A whisper spread through the cadets. "Is he military?" The band lowered their instruments. The color guard shifted uneasily. Then Harris pulled a folded document from his jacket and placed it on the desk beside the General S. empty chair. The seal glinted in the sunlight, the emblem of the Defense Command. "Effective as of this morning," he said. "I've been reinstated. Temporary rank, Brigadier General Harris. And today, gentlemen, this inspection is mine." The colonel went pale. But before anyone could speak, the Academy's chief aide rushed in, holding a phone. "Sir, confirmation from headquarters. He's telling the truth." A silence heavier than thunder settled over the field. For years, Harris had been the ghost of the Academy. A quiet man who never corrected anyone when they forgot his name, never spoke of his past, never complained about his menial duties. But that morning, as he stood before the cadets, the truth unfolded in stunned disbelief. He once led the 5th Rescue Battalion, a classified unit whose mission in the Northern Front had saved hundreds during the early years of the war. He was the man who'd flown into fire when others fled, who'd refused a full retirement to protect those under his command. But after a failed mission that cost his men their lives, he vanished from the ranks. Voluntarily. The guilt had been too heavy. And now, after 20 silent years, he'd returned. The cadets, young, proud, and untested, watched as the mail clerk inspected their lines. His steps were measured, eyes piercing. "Discipline isn't about standing straight," he said softly as he passed. "It's about standing for something." One cadet shifted nervously. Harris stopped before him. "Name?" "Cadet Morrow, sir." "Why did you enlist, Morrow?" The boy hesitated. "To make my father proud." Harris looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then stand like he's watching." The boy did. By the time Harris reached the end of the formation, there wasn't a sound across the field. The colonel, still seething but subdued, stood at attention. "Sir," he finally said, voice tight, "why didn't you tell us who you were?" Harris turned, his weathered face unreadable. "Because too many forget that rank means nothing if you've forgotten why you earned it. I needed to see who among you still remembered." Then, for the first time that day, he smiled, faintly but real. "And now I have." The parade resumed, but something had changed. The cadets marched with new purpose, every step echoing the lesson he'd just given, that humility isn't weakness and leadership isn't loud. When it ended, the Academy's flag lowered in salute. Harris stood quietly at the edge of the field, eyes glistening as the anthem played. A single tear traced down the scar on his cheek, the only sign of the burden he still carried. As the crowd dispersed, a young cadet ran up to him breathless. "Sir, is it true? You came back because of us?" Harris looked at the boy, the same way he'd once looked at the men he lost. "I came back," he said gently, "because someone has to remind you that service isn't about medals. It's about meaning. Because honor doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back." And long after the field emptied, the story spread, of the day the parade stopped and the forgotten mail clerk reminded 300 cadets what a true soldier looks like. If General Harris's story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to Whispered Words. Leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and what you stand for, because sometimes the quietest among us carry the loudest lessons.